The phrase taking the Lord's name in vain goes deeper than simply uttering profanities. It encompasses any action or speech that disregards God's holiness or misrepresents his character. In the good book, Exodus 20 verse 7 and Deuteronomy 5 verse 11 explicitly state, "You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, for the Lord will not leave unpunished the one who takes his name in vain." This commandment emphasizes that God will not ignore the irreverent use of his name. Also in the good book, Malachi 1 verses 6 to 14 and verses 3-19 highlight the importance of honoring God's name, especially among priests and leaders. Malachi rebukes those who offer polluted sacrifices and whose actions dishonor God's name, indicating that even actions can profane it. Also in the good book, Ephesians 5 verses 4 states, "Neither filthiness, nor foolish talking, nor coarse jesting, which are not fitting, but rather giving of thanks." Paul emphasizes that Christian speech should be constructive and God-honoring rather than coarse, vulgar, or meaningless. Question: anyone ever noticed the names for God were never verbalized by Jewish rabbis? To prevent articulating God's name from the mouth, they use what is called the tetragrammaton YHWH or JHVH, which are letters fashioned together in such a way to prevent and discourage people from verbally articulating God's name. Maybe Christians should imitate the Jewish rabbis by raising their sensitivity and reverence for God's name to a higher level. Think about it. Anyway, eventually vowels were added to the tetragrammaton, which led to our English words Yahweh and Jehovah. Well, here are a few reasons why Christians should refrain from using expressions like dag-nabbit, oh my God, and oh Christ Jesus. First, to honor God's name, even substitute curse words like dag-nabbit or gosh darn it often serve as euphemisms for stronger expletives involving God's name. The underlying intent is often to express strong emotion or frustration, potentially in a way that minimizes the sacredness of God or his name. Second, to emulate Christ, Christians are called to reflect Christ-like character in all aspects of life, including speech. Using language that is offensive, even if it doesn't directly use God's name, can contradict the kindness, compassion, and purity of heart expected of followers of Christ. Thirdly, to protect your witness. Casual profanity or flippant use of God's name can damage a Christian's witness to others, including non-believers, by potentially making yourself appear inconsistent in your faith and values. Fourthly, to focus your words towards gratitude. Ephesians 5 verse 4 suggests that instead of engaging in unwholesome or foolish talk, Christians should prioritize expressions of thanks to God. This shift in focus cultivates a heart of gratitude and aligns your speech with a God-honoring attitudes. First, it can cause discomfort to the hearer. Casual profanity or the irreverent use of sacred terms can be offensive to listeners, especially those with strong religious beliefs or those who are sensitive to such language. They're not likely to say anything to protest the offender. Their silence is their protest. Second, it seems to devalue that which is sacred. When expressions like "oh my God" or "oh Christ Jesus" become commonplace exclamations, they trivialize sacred words that should be considered holy and worthy of awe, words never meant to be used casually. Thirdly, it undermines a person's credibility and trustworthiness. A habit of profanity or casual misuse of God's name can negatively impact how people receive what comes from their mouth and their message. Furthermore, it may raise questions about their emotional control and spiritual maturity. Fourthly, it can set a poor example, especially for those in positions of influence or for parents and educators. Using profanity or trivializing God's name can set a negative example for children and others who may then imitate that behavior. Fifthly, it can stifle spiritual conversations. The use of such language can hinder conversations about faith and God, potentially making others feel unwelcome or uncomfortable in discussing spiritual matters with someone who frequently uses expressions like dag-nabbit or gosh darn nit, because they often serve as euphemisms for stronger expletives involving God's name. So, to sum it up, I find that taking the Lord's name in vain can extend far beyond using it as a curse word. It encompasses a much broader range of disrespectful and frivolous uses of God's name that may not overtly sound offensive. Although they are not said overtly, they still infuse a certain disregard for His holiness and a disregard for His sacredness. Christian teaching encourages believers to reflect a higher reverence for God in their speech and to prioritize building others up with the use of their words. Choose to refrain from casual expressions that may be offensive and diminish the reverence that belong to the names of God, because it will significantly contribute to you having a more positive Christian witness and bring proper honor to God's holy name. Maybe we should imitate the Jewish rabbis and raise our sensitivity and reverence for God's name to a higher level. Okay? So, if you enjoyed this video and you've gained further insight into the various ways invoking the name of God's in casual jesting can be harmful, you know what to do. Smash that like button and bump that subscribe. We out.